2 is where we do ProPresenter and OBS. OBS is what we use to live stream to.
What's it called? OBS?
OBS, yeah, Open Broadcasting System.
Okay.
So I'll start with ProPresenter first. So it's this little orangish yellow icon. It's also up here. Either one should work. Sometimes it does take a few minutes to start up. Which can be, yeah, we'll get to the update thing. So ProPresenter is designed by a company called Renewed Vision. This is going to be your standard for church presentations systems. So almost every church you go to will use this or some version of it. It can be prone to issues when it updates. So that's why we do have the thing to do not update, because there was an update a while back that they pushed that completely shut down everything. So I had to roll back the system. So until there's any further issues with it, it's just kind of safe to leave it as is. Do not update. There's this little green thing up here, update available. Sometimes we'll have a pop-up that says, hey, here's an update. It'll tell you what it does.
Don't do it.
Yeah, I either say no or skip this version, and then it'll, whenever the next one comes up, same thing. The nice thing is Renewed Vision, they do have a really good support process. So if you ever do have an issue with ProPresenter and you're not sure what's going on, if you just go to their website, either by looking up ProPresenter or Renewed Vision, they have a support email that you can reach out to, and they're really good. This software has been around for years. They've seen just about everything. But with that, so this is ProPresenter looks like. It is currently set to default full screen, standard Windows viewer for full screen, small screen. So usually when you come in, there may not be like a new presentation. So this area on the left where it says library, so this is going to be the collection of all the songs and other playlists that we've made. For example, we had Jesus Does today. It's going to be in this list. Then we have playlist, and the playlist itself is going to be the entire selection that you have for that Sunday. So what we usually do is date it. So here we have December 15th, January 5th, and then today, February 2nd. So you can just click that one to select which one you want. Sometimes there will already be one created for that Sunday, sometimes there isn't. If you need to create one, there's this little plus sign up here. So you're going to click that, you're going to do New Playlist. It should automatically load a new one down here, and it's already highlighted so we can rename it. So for the sake of it, we'll go ahead and date it for next week. So it's going to be February, oops, pressed the wrong button. So it's going to be February 2nd, 9th, thank you. Today's the 2nd, 2025. And so there now we have next week's system. So if you look at this week, February 2nd, we have a selection right here of the songs, slides, sermon slides. If I go to the 9th, there's nothing. So what we need to do, so up here, again.
So that's just going to be the lyrics and things, right?
Yes, yeah, so lyrics, slides, announcements.
Message slides.
Basically anything that you guys see on those screens is going to be in that. So I don't know what the...
Do you want me to give you the songs for next week?
I can pull it up.
Okay.
So if you guys are not yet in Planning Center, Joshua can connect you. So it's this little green app. And on here you can see the teams of who's here. So like today I was on audio. It says Matthew Jansen was on slides. It tells me everyone who is on an instrument, and it also tells me who is on vocals, and they've also started putting in who is preaching and who is doing communion. But if you go to order, so that's on Teams, if you go to order on the left side, it'll give you the actual run of show for that service. So this one's on February 2nd. There's these little green arrows. If I press the one to the right, it goes to February 9th. So I can see who's on next week. So it'll be David and Matthew. I got Joshua, Les, Larry on instruments, Tim speaking, then Jim, Cheryl, and Joshua for singing. If I go to the order, I can see next week. So it looks like our first song for next week is I Believe. So first thing I will do, it's like there's nothing in here, is there's this little magnifying glass for the search up here. You will click that, and you want to start on the far left one. This is our library, so it'll search the songs that we already have saved. So the song is I Believe. We'll see if it's here. It looks like it is not. So that's actually awesome, so I can show you how to add a song. So this one on the left, that's our library. This middle one, this is a database called Song Select. So this is something that is a separate subscription that the church has that allows us to use songs that are generally copyrighted for our worship services. So same thing, I believe. We're looking up in there. There's a ton of them. So what you can do is in here you can tap I believe, and then it'll pull up the arrangement attachments and the key attachments. What you're looking for is going to be in the arrangement attachments. It's going to be I believe and then lyrics PDF. Most of the time it's going to be a similar naming scheme where it's going to be lyrics PDF. That's what you're looking for. And so this is a lot of times what our singer's going to see. But what we're looking for is at the very, very bottom. If you zoom in, or if you have a hard copy, such as this one, which I don't know what song this is. So some of them won't have it, and we'll work through that. But there will be down here, there will be a line, and then it'll say CCLI license number. And you're looking for song number. So you have the CCLI song number and CCLI license number. The license number is associated with our account with Song Select. And so if we ever have an issue with licensing, that's the number that might get pulled up in a legal setting. It's very unlikely that has ever happened. Of the few churches that I've done this for, I've never seen that actually happen. But we get the CCLI song number. So for I believe, that number is going to be 7218424. So we'll look it up, and it's going to pull up the exact one that is being used for the lyrics that are going to be used. And so you're going to click that, click import, and now you're going to have this pop up. So it should default to 1024:768. Our screens are going to be a 3:4 aspect ratio, or 4:3 I should say, and this is going to be the same size as well. So you're going to keep that as is. If it's not that, you want to change it to it by clicking the drop down, and it should have something that pops up that says screen size. And if there is something there, that's what you want. If there's not something there, there's a separate issue that I will get to later. And then you want to make sure library, default, which is just the one up here, playlist, none. So you have a couple options. You can leave it as none. It'll import it, and then you'll just have to search for it again. What you can do is go down to the drop down for playlist, click the date for the playlist you're trying to add, and you click import. So now it is in our system here, in our actual database. So if I go all the way to the eyes, I can see it right there in I believe. But because I selected this playlist to load it into, it also loaded it in here at the same time. That's going to be the most efficient way to do it. So now we have the first song in there. So let's see what the second song is going to be. The second one is going to be This Is Our God. So again, we'll go to search. We'll start in the library. This is our God. So same thing, not seeing it. So we'll go to the song select one, keep it as the name, see how many pop up. So we're only seeing one, so that means it's most likely that one. So you can check it.
Yeah.
This is our God, this is who he is, he loves us. You can always pull up that lyrics PDF and just make sure it lines up. So we can go ahead and click import on that. We'll keep the playlist the same since we want it. Go ahead and import it and it'll automatically load it in.
Mac, do you know why those two, like we've done those two for a while, do you know why they're not in the playlist?
You can look at the date here, 12/15. So the week prior to that, I had to completely delete everything and then load back a previous version.
Because of the update?
Yeah, because that was when the update messed up everything.
I think I was here when that.
Yeah, so I had to go into the computer, delete everything associated with ProPresenter, reinstall it. So that's why those aren't there.
Okay.
So we've been relatively rebuilding, so there's a good chance that you will have to actually import these yourselves for a while. But eventually we'll get to the point where like the songs that we do most, they're probably already in there. Whenever we add a new song, you'll have to do that process. There's gonna be some weeks where you don't have to add a new one and it's already gonna be in there. There's gonna be some where everything is a new song.
And I think Wendy is going to be during the week
Okay.
putting songs in.
Yeah, that should work.
So-
Awesome. So then as long as that's happening, whoever's coming in on Sunday, they should already be one dated for that day. But just in case, you guys can also know how to do that too. But if you notice, so I believe everything looks good. So if you can click these, and so like I said, this is the same aspect ratio of our actual projector screens. So this is how it's going to be viewed. So you can see it, does it fit on the screen? You can see there is some overhead text there. I'll show you how to fix that. You can see, do each of these slides fit? So then we go here, this is our God. You can see these fit, so far. But this one, verse 1, and it has a little caution thing up in the top left. We're going to click that, and it's going to be this long body of text. So what we're going to do there, we're going to right-click it, and then we'll go to Edit. And so this is the full text slide right here. So it's pretty jumbled up. So I'm going to show you two things. So you see how there's this second line of text that's embedded within the text? That's the copyright. So what you can do, you don't want to delete the copyright because we do need to keep that within the file, but you can unclick Show on Screen. And so when we go back, that won't be there. And to do that, you'll just click Show. And then if you click it again, now it's gone.
So it just got rid of the copyright?
Yeah, so the
So
copyright
you don't have
is
to add a slide prior to that.
correct. So that is something that some churches will do differently. Some will have seen churches do a separate slide and have it on there. But you want to make sure you're not deleting the copyright from the file, so you're not changing any of this information, but you can change
Just
whether or
not
not it's showing
displaying
on
it.
the screen.
Yeah.
Correct. But this is still a pretty wordy wall of text. So what we can do, so I'm in Edit, you can double click it, and it looks like a giant text box. And now you can see where the rest of that text is that's not actually showing. So what you can do, so this is Our God. You can go to the lyrics. And you want to try to break it up naturally. So you don't want to break it up in the middle of a line, but you want to break it up at a reasonable point where whoever is singing will most likely be taking a breath.
And you don't want to change the font?
Generally, no, because with a lot of our people in the back,
Can't see.
So the funny thing with ViVU is a lot of our older people who can't walk all the way up, they like to sit in the back. Generally speaking, it's going to be the same people who have a hard time seeing. They are used to seeing this. At times, you may be asked to increase font size. We can do that. I can show you how to do that. But you generally don't want to make it any smaller.
Got it.
So now that I'm looking at, this is Our God's lyrics. So I'm in verse 1. So I can pull it up and see where it's at. So it looks like the second line, the way the lyrics are split, says, but he came and he died and he rose. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to put my cursor just before it. We're going to go to Reflow, put the cursor just before, and do Insert Slide Break. So it'll automatically create a separate slide. And then if you see, there's now no longer a caution icon there. So what I like to do, just for the sake of consistency, is then do the same, because now you have one small slide and then one really big slide for the verse. So then I'll go around. So we got they were like mountains that stood in our way. We'll go there, and those are going to be about the same size. So that way, when we go back to show, this is our first slide for verse 1. We'll sing that towards the end of Escape. You can press the space bar to go to the next slide. But he came and he died and he rose. We'll go through that one towards the end of there. Now, if you don't want to use the space bar, you can also use the mouse and just click the next slide. And so that way we can just go through all three without having to do a whole lot on our end. Then I'll go back to Reflow. I'll do the same thing for verse 2. Now, if you notice, verse 2 does not have that caution thing up there. So technically, we don't actually have to adjust verse 2. When we go up here, again, big wall of text. And so you want to make it in a way where it's going to be palatable to those who are singing it, especially for the congregations. That way they're not trying to read an entire paragraph on the actual screen. So verse 2, I'm going to look for verse 2 in here, and it's going to split at the same spot for the first one. But you heard every word, every whisper. So I'll go put my cursor beforehand, insert slide break. We'll do the same thing. These two, since they're about the same size, I'll leave them there. Chorus, we can do the same thing. Chorus splits out, he bore the cross. On the lyrics PDF, I'll do the same thing, slide break. We're pretty good there. Now my personal preference is I will usually go even one further and do one line at a time, but you do not have to do that. As long as it doesn't look like there's just a wall of text on the screen, everything can be read, you're okay. And sometimes too, you might have to add a song last minute, and so you might end up presenting just a lot of text on the screen. That is okay. As long as people can read the lyrics that are being put on the screen, that's fine. This really just comes down to aesthetic, trying to make it look nice, trying to make it more palatable for people. But at the end of the day, as long as whatever is here is on the screen, you're good.
Can you show on that, on I Believe or This is
Yes.
Our God? So right now there's just one chorus, but I think there's more, especially on like This Is Our God, there's
Yeah.
more.
So, whenever you import a song, it's going to come up in just the basic format. It will have the one verse, the one chorus, second verse, the bridge, and then the ending. So on this set of icons, you're going to have this one that looks like an arrow going that way and going that way with 3 boxes. You're going to click that, so arrangements. You'll see this drop down, masters. This is your master copy. You cannot change the master copy, even if you try. You're going to click a drop down. You're going to do new arrangement. I don't know why, but for the years I've been here, we've only ever just done it as numbers. If you want to name it, go right ahead, be creative. Don't have a preference. And so now you see there's ones here. So we'll go back to the master. It says master, select an arrangement to customize presentation flow. So if you don't click another one, this is the order you're going to go in. And then if you have it there, it's going to be up to you to know what comes next. If you do, great. If you don't, you want to make sure you're working on this prior to this the service actually starting. So that's where you can go back to the lyrics PDF. And I can see on here, it wants verse 1 and then verse 2. So I can just click it and drag it. Then it wants a chorus. So the chorus is already in the right spot. I don't have to do much there. Then it wants a verse 3, which you can see we don't actually have on here. So we'll get to that. Then a verse 4, now it's altars in the wilderness. So let's actually check something. So this is something that happens occasionally with song select, is what you see on the PDF and what you see in here is going to look different. And there's usually a good reason for that. So we'll go to edit real quick and we'll look at verse 1. So remember those walls that we called sin and same? They were like prisons that we couldn't escape. So now if we're looking at the lyrics PDF, we'll see that that first line is the same verse line for verse 1. Go to the second slide. But he came and he died and he rose, his walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave. So if we go to the second line of verse 1, it says, but he came and died and he rose, those walls are rubble now. It does not have, remember those giants. But if you look at what the lyrics PDF labels as verse 2, remember those giants is the start of verse 2. So we're going to go back to reflow. We're going to take remember those giants, insert a slide break. So it's going to be a separate slide. We're going to go back to show. And then we're going to start. So we have verse 1 right here. Now this is technically verse 2, but it's grouped up with verse 1. So we're going to right click the slide and we'll go to group. And you'll have this big old list that pops up. You have everything from verse, then verse 1 through 6, chorus, chorus 1 through 4, bridge, bridge 1 and 3, pre-chorus, tag, intro, ending, outro, interlude, vamp, turnaround, and then a blank. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and label this one verse 2, because that's how it presents in the actual slide. So now if you're looking back at it, we have verse 1, verse 2, verse 2. Well, there's not 2 separate verse 2s. So we'll look at this one. So I'm going to go ahead and move this back after the chorus, assuming that I'm going to find a similar issue that I did here. Because this one now has a verse 3 and verse 4. Odds are those are both in what song select considered verse 2. And I'll explain the why that is in a second. So same thing, remember that fear that took our breath away, faith so weak that we could barely pray. I'll look at what is called verse 3 on here, and that is the first line, so we're good there. So let's go to the second one. But he heard every word, every whisper, and that's the end of verse 3 on the PDF. So we'll go back to reflow. We'll scroll down to this one in verse 2. But he heard every word, every whisper. We go to the beginning. Now those altars in the wilderness. Insert slide break. So now, so if you remember, like with the very beginning, we had this big old wall of text. Now, you always want to naturally split that up, but what we're also finding now here is that was actually 2 verses on one slide. It was the same thing here. So the reason song select will often do that is to make the physical file smaller, so that way it's easier to download across systems. And so because when this song is done, verse 1 and verse 2 are just immediately sung back to back, a lot of times song select will just call it verse 1. And then because verse 2 and verse 3 and verse 4 are together, we'll call it this is verse 2 because they are so often sung back to back. And so we'll go here, same thing. We'll start here at the second verse 2. We'll click there. And then we'll do group, click verse 3. So now the reason I wanted to do that one first is because these are all still connected, even though they are separate verses. And so I clicked verse 3, it changed all 3 of these to verse 3. So whenever you do that, anything that it's linked to, it will change them as well. And then I will go to this one, group, verse 4, and it will only change that one. So in that, we haven't actually changed a whole lot. We've really just changed what these slides are actually called. When you're doing this, if you want to keep it as it was before, where all of this was called verse 1, all of this was called verse 2, that's fine. The reason, though, that I suggest changing it to this format is depending on who's leading worship, they may want to reorganize parts of the song. They might want to do a custom arrangement. And so you might end up having to create separations anyways, because maybe they want to do verse 1 and then do a chorus, and then a verse 2, and then a chorus, and then verse 3, and then a chorus. Well, if you had it as it was originally, it'd be really difficult to do that.
And sometimes as a rehearsal, we might say, hey, can we start at verse 2?
Yep.
And it's,
Yep.
if we're all calling it the same thing, it makes it easier.
Yeah, so as long as people are calling the same thing, it's going to make it a lot easier for everyone. But sometimes, too, like depending on time constraints, you might also just, hey, we're going to cut this verse altogether. So that's why I recommend doing that. And that's when it can be good to have another arrangement, is you can, let's say we want to get rid of verse 4. You can make an arrangement and title it No Verse 4. And then you just have 1, 2, 3, and then the rest of the song. So that's the nice thing. You can make any number of arrangements as you need. So that's the nice thing about it. So now we're looking back. We have the lyrics PDF. We have verse 1. Then go to verse 2. Then we have our chorus. We have verse 3. We have verse 4. And then we have chorus 2. Now something that's very common with music is that you will have the exact same chorus both times, but for some reason it's going to label them different things. That's generally the case. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a chorus from up here. Because if I grab this one, it's just going to move it. If I grab this one, I can add one into the actual arrangement. And so we got our second chorus. Then we got bridge 1. Then we got bridge 2. This one you can rename if you want, because you do have that option. So we can go ahead and do that, so that way you know which one is which when you're looking at the lyrics PDF. Bridge 1, bridge 2. And then it has chorus 3. This is our God. Same thing. We'll grab a new one, move it after. So now this is something that's pretty common with song select, is you'll have an ending, you'll have a tag, whatever it is, but we won't always use it. So I generally leave it in and then wait until the rehearsal, so that way Joshua and whoever else is leading or singing can say, hey, we're going to do this ending, we're going to do this tag. One thing to note for This Is Our God is on here, it's called an ending. On the PDF, it's called a tag. So that the actual semantics of that does not really matter. But for the sake of consistency, I am going to go ahead and change it to tag. So that way, when they're looking at it and they see that it's called tag, you're not getting confused thinking, why have an ending? What's the tag? And it is listed on here to be at the very end of the last chorus. They can decide not to do it. They can decide to move it somewhere else. That's fine. But as is, with this arrangement, it now lines up with the correct order based off of the lyrics PDF that we have in Planning Center. So that's all that. So you'll want to make sure you're doing that for all songs. So I believe you'll want to do the same thing, create a new arrangement. Then you'll want to follow that as well. Just make sure you're checking the lyric against the lyrics PDF.
And you can kind of see like verses are always blue.
Yep.
Choruses are is that red or pinkish?
Yeah, so as a general, verses will be always some shade of blue. Choruses are going to be like this, like salmony, pink, burgundy almost. Bridges will be purple. Pre-chorus is going to be a bright pink, usually. That's actually a recent change. It used to be gray, but now it's pink. Tag, orange, and intro, ending, outro are going to be kind of this ugly yellow, olive color. Interlude, vamp, turnaround are all going to be these light greens. We rarely actually use these. You'll see them every so often. That's why they're there. And then blank, we really don't use often. That's the only time you would really use a blank is like, let's say after verse 1, they want to take an intentional moment where there is nothing being said. Then you can put in a blank slide and be fine.
Sometimes like an instrumental guitar thing. Or
So like if it's a longer instrumental, you can do that. Normally, because like you will have a lot of your congregation who knows the song, and you'll be fine. Every so often, you're gonna get people who don't really know what's coming in, and so usually for that purpose, like if I know there's gonna be an interlude or like an instrumental piece between verse 1 and 2, I will probably still go ahead and do verse 2. And so that way, whoever's down in the congregation, like they can read it and they know what's coming up. But if it's like a long instrumental and maybe Joshua or someone requests a blank slide for the sake of that, you can go into edit and then you can go to the one you want it after and then click the plus up here, add new blank slide. And there you go, you now have a blank slide. This text just lets you know there's a text box there and you can go to the show and now there's a blank slide, so it's not going to show anything.
And sometimes we do that for the singers just so they don't start singing the next part
Yes.
when we need a guitar solo.
So I generally
Yeah.
don't keep these in, but what you can do is kind of how we labeled everything. You can go to group, we can label a blank slide. So now there's a separate blank slide. So this is our God, doesn't really have any times where you need a blank slide. So I can go ahead and remove that from the arrangement. It's still going to be up here. So if I decide that I need one, I can bring it back down and we'll have it again. But in the meantime, I don't need it. I'm not going to include it in that arrangement. So that's the nice thing about that. Is it's just really quick and easy to just drag things and go as you need. As far as moving from slide to slide, so I mentioned how you can do just your mouse, click next one to next one, or you can do space bar. That's what I prefer. You also see that you have letters. So like let's say like we get done with verse 3. So every so often you will notice like you're listening to it, you'll go to click verse 4, but what the band is singing, wait a minute, that's verse 1. You could drag your mouse all the way up, but especially if you're using the space bar, you can't go backwards with the space bar. But if you see verse 1, it has an A on there. So if you press A, it'll pull up verse 1. If you want bridge 1, it's labeled B. You press B and bring that up. I don't use that very often. I usually prefer to use the mouse, but it's going to come to like whatever you end up being comfortable with. So mess around with it. If you like the mouse, if you like using letters, cool. Whatever is going to make it easiest for you to use.
Can you go backwards with shift space bar?
Shift spacebar. I've honestly never tried that. Let's see. Does not appear so.
How about arrow keys?
Arrow keys, I believe you can. The up and down don't really work outside of scrolling the scroll wheel. But yeah, left and right do work. So you can do that. So yeah, there's plenty of ways to move around, figure out which one you're more comfortable with. It doesn't matter if people use different ones. It's not going to mess anything up.
On Sunday morning when we get here, Wendy puts the charts behind the Bible there on the altar communion table, and then I put them out in kind of order. So before you come up, it might be helpful to grab a set of charts, or you can always work off your phone like that. But it just kind of depends. Sometimes it's easier to have an actual.
And when you
physical
say a set of charts, you mean kind of it's
The 4 songs, and there'll be papers
Yeah,
just
so
like that.
it looks just like this. Yeah.
and it'll be in the order that it's going to be shown, kind of thing. Or,
Yeah, I put them
Okay.
left to right up on
Yep.
the table there. So.
Other things too is we have 2 of our songs here. So for the sake of not going too long today, I'm not going to do the other ones. But we also have things like announcements, we have communion, we have sermons. So what I've done is we go back up to where we add a song, and then in our library, you can just look up announcements. We have announcements 1, 2, doesn't really matter. You can just drag that in, and now you have announcements. So the reason that I've done this is so the previous format was you would take each individual slide and you'll add it into this list, and it just makes this long list that just kind of takes up space. By doing this, by going through announcements, I know it's no longer Christmas, but hey, Merry Christmas. Okay, we want to go to children's ministry? Cool, we can just press space. Women's gathering? Space. So that way we're not trying to scroll up and down, and especially if someone refers back to a previous one, you can see it all at once. The other nice thing about this, so up here is we have this one on the left, slideshow. We can click that, and this is in seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, 20. So I will usually have the announcements up here at the very top, so that way when people are coming in, you can just click one of these. Let's say we want to do 5 seconds, and then let's go ahead and select Christmas. So you can see this is red bar with an advanced wheel. So once that's full, automatically go to the children's ministry. And this is going to automatically loop. So if we go all the way down here, when that one's done, it's going to go back up to the top. So that's usually nice to have for the pre-service announcements. Now, when
Do you
someone's
usually do
speaking,
them 5 seconds or?
you can do 5 seconds, you can do 10, you can do 15.
When I do it, I usually set it to 15.
15.
There you go. And so this setting will automatically save. So if someone turns this on, it will automatically be on for the next time someone uses the same announcements file. The other thing though is currently we have it on a 15-second timer, Well, let's say whoever's doing announcements is talking about men's breakfast and they're talking longer than 15 seconds. So it could be going on and on and on, and then next thing you know, it's automatically going to switch to adult Sunday school. So you have a couple options. Sometimes the cheap and easy is just to occasionally re-click the slide, it'll restart the timer. You can do that if you want. I will usually just turn it off. I'll click none, no timer, and then allows me to be on each one for as long as I need to be. So if you ever want to turn it on, again, it's up here. You just click the timing that you want. If you want it off, it's gonna be the same thing. It'll be blue if the timer's on. You just click none, and it'll be gray if it's off.
So the announcements will usually be at the beginning of the service and then also after like the second song. They'll be like the same.
So you
file.
can have them in both places. I often only have one. That's going to come down to something that you just prefer. So I'll have the announcements up front so I can cycle it. If I want to have a second one up here, so I just know, okay, so we have announcements for the pre-service. We're going to do I believe, this is our God. Then we're going to talk about the announcements. If you want to have that there so you remember that's there, do it. It comes down to like what you're comfortable with. But since these are the same file, if I have it on a 15-second timer, I go to this one, it's also going to be on. So as long as if you're using the same one, it'll do that. Now, if you notice, when I first look up announcements, there's multiple. So if you prefer to have one specifically for pre-service and then one of them for later, you can do that. So announcements for pre-service, I can have that on a 15-second timer. When it comes to announcements, I can click announcements 1. This one doesn't have a timer. You'll just have to make sure that you have all the same slides in each of these, and I'll show you how to do
Is
that.
this setting global and it affects all the charts in that announcement thing? They're all 15 seconds or
Yes.
they're all not?
Yeah, so everything within this announcements file
Is one.
is going to be this 15-second timer.
And then
so,
if you turn it off, then you'll have to advance each one?
correct. Yeah, so if I turn this off, it's never going to switch on its own. I'll have to manually do
Okay.
it. But now that I have announcements here, I've got announcements 1. I don't want to have a second thing of announcements I'm not going to use. So I can just click that, and you'll see that we have delete, which will just take it right out of there. It's not going to delete it out of the library unless I go here and I delete something here. So you don't want to delete something out of the library. You only ever want to delete it out of the actual playlist. So you can see we're starting to fill up a little bit. I don't need to constantly refer to this. So right next to this plus button, I'm going to plus the up arrow. So it'll get rid of that. Now I can see whatever I put here. So in the same way that we have announcements, we also have a sermon. So again, sermon 1, 2, regular, whatever you want to use. So I go back here, I've got announcements, I've got my sermon. So this will just be the slides from whatever week this was. And then sermon slides are usually uploaded to a shared drive morning of. Are we using the OneDrive yet, or are we still using the, we're still not? Okay.
No,
I
it's
don't,
still using
I don't
that.
think we have finished yet, but
Okay.
there's also
Still
the
that.
the
F drive?
announcement slides are in the
Yes.
same place
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go looking for those in a second. We'll just use today's for the example because I'd be shocked to see next week's already up.
It's not.
Yeah, there you go. So I know I don't need these, so I'm gonna go ahead and click here and drag up, so that way I can delete these in bulk. And then now I have an empty sermon file. So then I'm gonna click the minimize. You have the F drive right here. So this is gonna pull up the shared drive, and you're gonna go to Sunday sermon. It's in all caps. Then you're gonna find what year it is. It's 2025. And then you're going to find the date. So for the sake of this, we will go ahead and use February 2nd. And so everything that's numbered, those are generally going to be your sermon slides. Everyone has generally been using Canva for a while to use sermon slides. And when you save slides from Canva, it automatically saves them in the number order. So unless someone goes in and separately names them, it's going to be 1, 2, and those are your titles, which is nice because you also know what the order is supposed to be. And then down here, you have the actual names of your announcements. So what you can do, you can click up here, save however many you need, and then just move that to the side so you still have all those highlighted. ProPresenter, we can bring these up, and then we can just drag these in. So then this will come in. There's already a file at, and then it'll give what it is, and the title, 1. So because we've been using Canva for just about everything, there's a lot of slides titled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for the sake of space, you can write over. If you don't want to, you can do a new version, if you use the existing, it'll pull up a random one, also named 1, and that's just the one that will load. You almost never want to use existing. But so I'm going to do right over, but then now it's like, okay, now it's asking the same thing for 2, so I can do right over again, or I can click apply to all and do right over. It'll do it to all the ones that I have highlighted, and it'll automatically load all those in. So you just want to double check, make sure I got everything. Oh, I missed one, so I'll just bring that in. And that one, I'll just do the right over. So now we have that one. So, and then here we have just the full sermon, same thing. If I want to go, it is loading really slowly. I'm going to figure that out. Ah, that's why. Okay, so you can do space, but if you notice, it is loading really slowly between each slide. Reason for that is down here, 4.3 second for the crossfade. So we have a couple different settings. We have the one that's just the parallel bars, and that just makes it a quick cut. So if you want to do that, cool. If you want to fade into it, it's going to be these separate ones. You want both of them selected. And so this one on the left is the fade out timer. That's 0.3 seconds. This one, the fade in, is 4.3. So we'll drop that down to around the same. So it'll fade in, but it's going to be a lot faster. So that's what those do. This slider here, this is going to be the actual size that you are seeing here. So like if I have it really small, I can't really read much of it, but I can see all of them all at once. I usually want to be able to read what I can see, so let's increase it all the way up. And so sometimes when it does that, that is global to the entire playlist. So then I'll sometimes just click a different one and click sermon instead of scrolling all the way to that one. So now I'll see 2 of them side by side, and so that way as I'm going, like for me, I can reasonably read that. If you want it to have a little smaller, you can bring that back in. Now you have 3 across. You can just figure out like what size you want for the sake of going from slide to slide to be able to read. If you prefer to read off of there, cool too. I'll go ahead and move that up here. Yeah, so now we have our announcements, and announcements are loaded from the same space. So I'll go ahead, highlight all these, delete. I'll make this smaller, and I'll go back here. So now we have all of these as our slides. I will highlight all of these. Exact same thing, bring them in, apply to all, right over. And now this has all of today's. So whenever next week is loading in, you'll just have to delete these and then add those in. We do communion once a month, and so usually that'll be in media up here. So these will be anything that's been saved. So go down playlist, default, video inputs. It actually doesn't look like it's been saved in, so we can actually do that really quick. So I'll click out of here so I don't have everything. Here's, I'll take the communion slide. I'll bring that in. Oops. Not loading in right away. So we'll bring it back to that one. It looks like, is it going to load in? Yes, it is. Apply to all. Do right over. So now, for the communion slide, that's one that we refer to pretty often. If you need a communion slide, you can just go to media, go to the default for playlists, and there it is. Usually though, whatever is being used in announcements, everything will be in here. So for the sake of that, you can just grab it in bulk, slide it in. The reason you may want this though, or especially for the Lord's Prayer, which I think actually needs to be loaded back in order for us to use that from when I last had to clear everything out. You can keep that in here. It's like if I want a separate slide for communion, I can bring that up in there. So now I have the sermon, and I have a separate side just labeled communion. And if I press play, it'll show. So that is the difference too between using the announcements up here versus just having them all listed here. And that's really why this has been what we've been using, is that way we don't just have a couple dozen slides taking up a ton of space. If you don't want to see media anymore, you just press it again and it goes away. So
for there, we'd want to take communion out of announcements, right?
So yeah, you can leave it in. It kind of comes up to like it's nice to have in a separate one because it is like a separate time frame. You don't really need it in the announcements. If you want it there, you can leave it there. If you don't, same thing, just delete it out of there individually and you're good. And then now you just have it separately for here. Trying to think if there's other...
So we didn't have Lord's Prayer this morning.
Yeah, I think it needs to be loaded back in.
You'll find it if you back up to 2025, it's
Yep.
in the standing slides.
Standing slides? Awesome, let's do that right now.
Right there, Lord's Prayer.
Yep,
Bottom.
Lord's Prayer, awesome. Okay, So we'll go to media. We're in that same default playlist. Lord's Prayer. And we'll go ahead and load that in, apply that all. Looks like there actually might have been one. Not sure where it was. So same thing. You can just bring that in. Now you have the Lord's Prayer. There you go. So now anytime you're looking for that, yep, you can find that in standing slides, as one you just said. Now it's also here. You can do that. Either place works. These are not ones that we're going to need for next week, though. And since this labeled for next week, let's go ahead, delete these out of there. Sermon and announcements we'll leave in. Those will just have to be actually changed out. But that's your basics for ProPresenter. Trying to think if there's other areas. So